Here we have lesson 18, putting it all together. All right. So the putting it all together scenario is usually wrapping up from the last few lessons. Okay, so the first slide here is we have you are the emergency medical responder. Okay, and these are things that we're going to discuss in person. All right, 1 second, let me adjust this. Okay. You arrive at a recreation center in response to a call that a 17-year-old is having difficulty breathing after engaging in swim practice for a local high school swim team. The patient is sitting on the pool deck, leaning forward with his shoulders elevated. The coach is talking to him. He is pale, sweating, and visibly unable to catch his breath, being able to speak only a few words in between breaths. Okay, so look at this scenario here. You have someone who has difficulty breathing. They expended themselves, right? So, it's because it's after engaging in swim practice, so you have the expenditure factor there. And then they're pale, sweating, and can't catch their breath. So that is another variable in the situation, and we'll discuss this. And remember, pale, that is also a sign of something as well, on which we discussed. All right, so here's scenario 2, in which you are the emergency medical responder. You and your police officer partner are on the lunch break at a local diner when another patron suddenly rises from the table, clutching his throat. Initially, he is coughing forcefully, but then stops coughing altogether and is unable to speak. You have a first aid kit in your vehicle. So keep in mind, this person is at a diner, okay? And he starts clutching his throat. So initially is coughing and then you have the first aid kit in your vehicle, okay? So he's at a diner. Obviously, there's typically food involved in a diner, which we don't want to have to make assumptions. He's clutching his throat. Remember, we discussed what that is a universal sign for, okay? So we'll discuss this scenario in person. So here we have our third scenario, okay? You and your partner arrive at the scene of a motor vehicle crash that occurred on a country road outside of town. The car came to rest on its roof in a small ravine. The driver of the car was thrown through the windshield and is lying on the ground about 10 feet from the vehicle. The driver was the only person in the vehicle at the time of the crash. There is a faint odor of gasoline and the hood of the car is smoking. Okay. Okay. So you have a car crash. Okay, a vehicle crash. The hood of the car is smoking and there's an odor, right? The driver was thrown. The driver is 10 feet away from the vehicle, so the driver was thrown. So is it the safest scene to enter? A lot of things to consider, right? So you have scene safety is always the number one before we go into anything else. So now we have putting it all together, okay? And this is just recapping a few things we already went over. So you have the process of opening the airway. You have it with head tilt, chin lift, maneuver, or jaw thrust without head extension if there's a suspected head, neck, or spinal injury. You have finger sweeps or suctioning as needed to try to get some kind of object that's, might be stuck, okay? Then you have ventilations, okay? Breaths. You have mechanical ventilations, or you have, oral. Manage the airway with mechanical or manual suctioning, okay? Breathing devices, airway adjuncts, right? So administer supplemental oxygen based on local protocols. It'll vary from state to state, county to county. Obtain a sample history and conduct a secondary assessment. Okay. Now, the sample history is conducted, after the more emergency type situations have been ruled out already. I mean, it's no longer emergency. The person is coherent enough to be able to speak and things like that. So, just getting more information to pass down to more advanced emergency medical staff.